The Dallas Cowboys plunged a dagger into the heart of the Eagles' playoff hopes on Sunday with a controversial overtime win, but although much of the discussion has been centralised around the officiating, there's been a little bit of talk about Carson Wentz and his abilities coming off of an ACL recovery. Now in his third season, believe it or not, Carson Wentz is completing 69% of his passes, which is a career high so far, completing them with an average of 7.67 yards per pass, and is still thrown 21 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. But although Wentz is literally mirroring Tom Brady's 2017 MVP campaign, fans are quick to draw out the Nick Foles takes, or when at least watching the game on television, see a very different quarterback to the one that played last year. So we know there are problems with Wentz, we know there are fundamental faults, but what we want to do today is understand why they're there, can they be corrected, and what are we going to see from Wentz moving forward. My name is Liam Jenkins, and this is an episode of Eagles Film Room. Before we get into it though guys, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. We want to create the biggest Eagles community on YouTube and hopefully get to 5,000 subscribers by Christmas, but we need your help to do that. So join the Philly Sports Network Nation. Don't forget you've got daily Eagles coverage at phillysportsnetwork.com, as well as podcasts, film reviews and so much more right here on the YouTube channel. Join the fun, hit that sub for a dub. We're going to start with the awareness inside the pocket, and this was such a key trait for Wentz last year that just isn't quite there this time around, and this was a perfect play to examine that. So Wentz gets the ball on an option look, drops back into the pocket, and while there's pressure coming around, he stays centered in that one spot and is trying to force the ball down the middle. In fact, he doesn't deviate away from his target, and for Tyrone Crawford, that's too easy to leap up and try and make a play. Now, they do get a roughing the passer on that play, but the point is, Wentz just stayed in that centralized spot, and that's a key area of this video. So here we can see the route tree that the Eagles are going to run, and while this is fairly simplistic and not a lot of guys get open, there's a check down over the middle that Wentz doesn't take. Why does that matter? Because look at what happens when this ball comes out. It's not so much where it's going, it's how it's being thrown. So instead of extending the play with his legs, he's off balance and he's actually falling away from the target. His feet aren't squared to where he's throwing, he has to create more torque with his upper body, and in turn that means that the ball comes out at an awkward angle, which is why we're seeing a lot of overthrows and underthrows from what is traditionally a very accurate passer. This all stems from the fact that Wentz isn't planting that leg to step into his throws, and again, this will be a common theme throughout the video. But instead of that, he's having to generate that power with his upper body to swing through, and it either comes down in like a Kevin Hogan-esque effect or a Nate Sudfeld effect where you're having to almost throw the ball down to the ground, which is why it's coming out lower, or alternatively, as you're slinging away, you're going to get a weird spin on the ball which can almost lead the receiver out of bounds like we saw just then. Now, I view quarterbacking as very much like a golf swing. There are so many components to it, and if your feet aren't aligned properly, if you don't have the right posture, or you're overswinging, you're going to struggle to get consistency, and this is where the problems are coming from. If we compare this to 2017, watch how Wentz is able to keep that same distance between his feet, stay light on his toes, and almost climb back up the pocket, driving into that throw, pushing his body weight forward. You get a much better angle of it when it's slowed down here. This is against the Denver Broncos. We use a couple of clips from this game, but he keeps his head up. Watch the feet. Now he's going to reposition, just keep them moving, and drive forward, planting that leg, meaning his back leg is going to come up and push into that throw. We're not seeing that this year because, of course, the ACL recovery is going to make that a million times harder. It's easy to assume that as time goes on and Wentz plays more football, that he's going to get more comfortable. But the point is, if you're taking as many hits as he's taking, as many sacks as he's taking, one, the comfort or the confidence may not be there, but that injury that typically heals on a 2-year timescale may not be at full strength to hold that weight consistently just yet. For instance, on this touchdown to Alshon Jeffrey, you'll notice his back was completely straight after the ball comes out, and he steps away like it's totally effortless because that power is being driven with the lower body. If we compare this to what we see against the New Orleans Saints, just watch that plant leg as it comes down. The back leg almost does a jitter as the ball comes out, and as a result, it is drastically underthrown and almost picked off. Now, you see it better from that angle, but as that back leg comes comes down, he doesn't put the weight on, but almost back onto the rear leg, which is just going to cause all kinds of problems because you can't do that every play. You can't rely on that back leg being able to kind of stand on its own weight. But if we take a look at this play, now this is a perfect play drawn up by Doug Peterson. You're going to have two intermediate routes. The one I want to draw your attention to is Dallas Goedert, who's the second man in from the top. As he breaks to pull that route outside, the outside corner is going to get pulled away because of the man coverage vertical situation. So at this point, Goedert has a huge window to work with, but Wentz doesn't see him and instead tries to force a ball to a receiver that is strictly covered. Now, what does this look like from Wentz's perspective, and why is this so damaging? Bottom line is, if Wentz was lighter on his feet instead of planting straight away after a two-step drop, then that Goedert route would have been able to develop and therefore Wentz scanned the field. If we compare this to this play against the Chicago Bears, look how twitchy Wentz is in the pocket. Now, I'm not expecting him to do this every single play and fake a screen and do all this magical athleticism, but he's so much more confident moving around. And if we compare this to the Dallas Cowboys game, he is stuck in the pocket. He's having to constantly move on the spot. It's very Tom Brady-esque, very Drew Brees-esque, which isn't a bad thing, but Wentz isn't a pocket passer. He's at his most dangerous when he's able to move around and become this explosive weapon, just like he was against the Cardinals. Now, this was in 2017, and this is so subtle, but look at the difference. The footwork again, light, moving, keeps his head up, bang, delivers with that plant leg. That's the difference between 2017 and 2018. And on this fumble play, this is a very interesting one, because this play looks like a cover 2, but I think what actually happens is it does become a weak cover 3, and Wentz knows this, and what he tries to do is actually hold the safety to funnel the ball to Nelson Agholor. So if we play it out, watch what happens as the cornerbacks both take off about 50% of the field defending vertically, much like the Eagles do in their defensive scheme. But just take a look at this for a second. You've got 3 receivers that are wide open, and where is the ball? It's absolutely nowhere. Wentz just holds on to it too long. Now, what happens on this play is that the offensive line failed to pick up a stunt. Jason Peters just lets his man get back up off his hands and knees and drive to the quarterback. That shouldn't happen. But from the quarterback standpoint, this ball should be coming out faster. It's clear what Wentz is trying to do. He's trying to pin that safety back. He's not staring down his receiver. He knows Aguilar's going to be there. And as he turns to throw, it's just a mixture of the offensive line crumbling and Wentz not being as confident because he doesn't have that release, because he can't plant his leg. And it all stems from the same thing. Very much stuck in the pocket when it comes to this season. If we compare this to this touchdown pass against the Chiefs, look at the upper body movement. His whole body moving in unison with his legs. He delivers an absolute slingshot to Nelson Agholor. But if we watch it from the alternate view and just see how Wentz is able to maneuver his way through the pocket, it's a similar kind of look to what we saw on this last play from a pass rushing perspective. You've got a wide forward there, going to try and crash the outside, keep Wentz contained. He starts outside, pump fakes to draw one away. More importantly, as his head moves, his body follows. When he goes through his progressions, when he comes off that primary read, his body is following suit, aligned to the target. We're rarely seeing that this year. Now, whether Wentz has been instructed by someone to stay inside the pocket longer or to protect his body, or maybe it's just his own conservative nature now because of what's happened, maybe it's medical, maybe it's to do with strength, but either way, you compare that play against the Redskins to here, where his feet aren't lined up to Golden Tate, and you see the difference it makes. Again, just watch this drop back. Wentz is keeping his eyes glued, but look at where his feet are pointing. They're going way outside of the mark, and that's where the ball goes, to a point where the cornerback can make a play, and that is the impact it makes. Again, it's very much like golf. If your feet are pointing to the left, the ball likely is going to come to the left. Now, Wentz here against the Panthers throws an interception. This was one that sticks with Eagles fans for so many reasons, but if you slow this down, in one motion from an RPO to a ball over the top, there is no power generated. That was always going to be a problem. The ball sails on him because he's facing forward. His feet weren't even set properly. Again, all coming back to that exact same issue. Let's compare this to another play from the Denver Broncos game last year, and Wentz, again, the body is constantly moving, constantly aware. He ends up throwing this one away, but the way he's able to scan through his reads so cleanly, so smoothly, it's very Patrick Mahomes, it's very Russell Wilson. This is what made him so dangerous. Against the Cowboys, that ball there should never have been thrown. He's got alignment in his face, but there was a path to get out of it if he wanted. Now, he's luckily able to complete that, but you can't expect to make that play every single time, and the Saints were absolutely punishing in in those sorts of errors. Now that drop back alone is something we saw in 2016, where he's almost crossing his legs over as he's stepping back, whereas in 2017, after a visit to 3D QB, who are the gurus that work with Matt Ryan and Tom Brady and company, what we saw was that footwork almost have an even base throughout his drop back. From step 1 to step 5 or whatever it may be, what we saw was Carson Wentz just evenly pacing his way back in the pocket, then climbing his way back through. This year is very much like his rookie self because it's more comfortable and you're not constantly planting 50% of your weight on that front leg. It makes total sense. But this idea that Carson Wentz is any less of a quarterback, the fact that he's nursing this ACL it looks like, or he's playing differently because of it, and is still completing 70% of his passes, and is still throwing 21 touchdowns, despite the offensive deficiencies across the board, is a little bit mesmerizing, to be brutally honest with you. Now, another criticism has been that Wentz is staring down Zach Ertz or targeting him too much, or just simply staring down receivers. And this is an example of that against the Cowboys. What we see here is a nice concept. It's one designed to create separation for one player. Wentz goes straight to Zach Ertz, knowing there's not going to be too much room for a gain, whereas Darren Sproles on the other side of the field was wide open. But this play is actually worrying. I referenced that back leg earlier on, and what it does, it almost kind of twitches out of place there. It goes out before locking back in, if you just saw it, which is not good. And this is what Wentz is trying to do. He's trying to take the weight almost off of that front leg and doesn't want to plant it down. As a result, that back leg is being loaded up with pressure, and if it clicks out of place, I mean, the last thing you would want to see is an injury. But this is what's causing these overthrows. This is why he's staying to his targets over the middle, because he's simply not adjusting in the pocket. He's not moving his body with his eyes when he's scanning through his reads. And if we watch this play again against the Cowboys from the other night, he's going to sling this one. His feet aren't as square as they could be, and that one goes straight over the head of Golden Tate on a miscommunication. I spoke lots recently in a film room on Wentz about him forcing the ball to targets or making ill-advised throws, and that's still the case because he feels like, I guess, he's got to get that ball out in some way or got to do something with it. There's a reason he's fumbled 9 times this season, and you can point to Dak Prescott and say that he's a fumbling machine, but Wentz hasn't been much better. And if we look at this concept, again, it's not going to be where the ball goes, but more so how it comes out and the decision Wentz makes to get this ball away, as opposed to trying to do a little bit more with his legs and maybe get into the open space. So he tries to force the ball to Zach Ertz and it doesn't work, but that's not the problem. The problem is the forcing of the ball to begin with. So Wentz goes through his progression, struggles to get his feet set that aren't lined up, dodges pressure, but why he's throwing a Superman lob, I will never understand in that situation. There is no need for it. You've got an open path to run out if you need it. You've got a receiver that's crossing the other way. You did not need to just almost leap over an offensive lineman, because if a D lineman bats that down, you're going to be in trouble. Later that game, you've got Zach Ertz being bodied up at the top of the screen, and down the bottom, Alshon Jeffrey getting inside separation on a slant. 3 guesses where the ball goes, because it is not to Alshon Jeffrey. Instead, he throws it before Ertz has any sense of separation. It would have been double covered anyway because of the safety, and that has to be infuriating for Alshon Jeffrey, who had a step on his man, who had a pass to get a massive yard after catch potential, and Wentz, because of the way he's setting up in the pocket, actually comes off of the read for Alshon Jeffrey after trying to hold the safety, I suppose, but it's too little too late, and Alshon Jeffrey just left wide open and unaccounted for. It's not the only time he did that game either. Here you've got 3 wide receivers open, all circled in red. Wentz decides to go into the blue circle where he's got Zach Ertz double covered, and again just trying to force that ball to a security blanket, and defenses are beginning to pick up on this now and start to key in. Wentz is just in this state of mind at the minute where he can't get past 2 or 3 reads. I've not seen him move more than his 3rd read, which is either a compliment to the offense for keeping it simple, or in comparison to last year, it's just a reduced complexity. There is nowhere now, I mean, look at that, his head stays fixed on Ertz the entire time. There is nowhere near the level of intricacy or layering that there was last year on this offense. And even there, that was a fantastic throw to Dallas Goedert. You cannot fault it. This is the point I'm trying to get across. We know there are fundamental problems with Carson Wentz, and we now know the reasons why they're coming up. But this is still a quarterback who can do this, to throw a back shoulder throw to a tight end who's still got all of this going on psychologically or on the offense. To put that ball into the pocket is Steph Curry-esque. That is a beautiful throw. And this one, another just scene of absolute perfection. Wentz didn't have an atrocious game against the Cowboys. It's just that mechanically, he's playing like a different quarterback right now. And the offense is performing differently as a result, but that's what I'm trying to get you to understand, that Carson Wentz, despite all of this, is still playing like a top 10 quarterback. He's still nursing the ball, he's still able to sustain drives, and he's still capable of those big time plays. The problem is that all of those mechanical setbacks that were hindering him in 2016 are now amplified because of that ACL recovery. A trip to 3D QB in the offseason may well help, or just simply having a full offseason with the team, a full training camp and the such may be enough to gear him up for a full year. But hopefully guys, this has kind of calmed some of your Carson Wentz hatred for now. I don't think any of it's warranted. There's fundamental criticism and then there is the unwarranted criticism. Just make sure you're on the right side of the fence. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It will mean the absolute world to me. Again, we want to get to 5,000 subscribers and we're grinding out content until Christmas. You're getting 3 podcasts this week. We have 1 on Monday. You're going to get a second film room if this video gets 500 likes and a Madden video. We need your support, guys, and don't forget you can read my stuff every day at phillysportsnetwork.com or follow me on Twitter at LiamJenkins21.